They shaved a waitress's head for fun. Then her Mafia boss husband walks in. The straight razor glinted under fluorescent lights as four men held her down, her screams echoing through the empty restaurant. Hair fell in dark clumps around the chair, scattering across the polished floor like black snow. Elena's hands clawed at the armrests, her knuckles white, her voice breaking with each plea for them to stop. They laughed, recording on their phones, making jokes about how she'd look better bald. The blade scraped against her scalp, cold metal biting skin, as she felt something inside her shatter that had nothing to do with vanity and everything to do with dignity. Then the door opened. The laughter died. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. A man stepped through the threshold, 6'3" of controlled fury in a custom Italian suit. And when he spoke, his voice was quiet enough to be terrifying. "Elena, mi amor, I'm here now. Before we go any further, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from right now? What city? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below because you're about to witness something that'll make you believe in justice again. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next is going to restore your faith that some people in this world still protect the innocent, still stand up to bullies, still make the monsters pay. This story is about to get nuclear. You ready? Let's go back to where it all started. 6 hours earlier, Elena Vasquez tied her apron around her waist and checked her reflection in the staff bathroom mirror of Chin's Pearl, the upscale restaurant on Riverside, where she'd worked double shifts for the past 3 years. 26 years old, dark eyes that held storms she never talked about, hair that fell to her shoulders in waves. She kept meticulously neat because presentation mattered in places like this. She didn't wear her wedding ring to work. Never did. Not because she was ashamed of Victor, but because drawing attention to herself in any way felt dangerous, and expensive jewelry on a waitress raised questions she didn't want to answer. The ring stayed home in a velvet box. Their marriage stayed private. That's how they both wanted it. She sent half her paycheck to her mother in Arizona every month, covering medical bills from the diabetes that was slowly stealing her mom's eyesight, and she never complained about the work, about the exhaustion, about the customers who snapped their fingers at her like she was a dog. This job meant survival. Dignity came from doing it well. The evening shift started smooth. Friday night, crowd rolling in, businessmen celebrating deals, couples on anniversaries, the usual rotation of people who had money and wanted everyone to know it. Elena moved between tables with practiced efficiency, remembering orders without writing them down, smiling through the casual condescension that came with the territory. Mr. Chin watched from behind the bar, a nervous man in his 50s who owned the restaurant but rented the building from someone with a last name that made him sweat whenever the lease came up for renewal. He'd built this place from nothing, poured his life into it, and the fear of losing it made him small in ways that mattered. Elena had watched him ignore harassment before, watched him look away when customers crossed lines, watched him choose his business over his employees every single time. She understood it, didn't respect it, but understood it. They walked in at 8:30. 4 of them, early 20s, designer clothes that screamed trust fund, voices already loud with afternoon drinking that had bled into evening. Damian Russo led the pack, blonde hair styled with product that cost more than Elena made in a week, a smile that had never encountered real consequences. His crew followed like satellites, Kyle with a nervous laugh, Brett with the dead eyes, Marcus with the razor in his pocket, though nobody knew that yet. They'd been celebrating, Damian announced to the entire restaurant, because Daddy had made another DUI disappear, another assault charge vanish into the legal system's convenient memory hole, another problem solved with money that stretched far enough to bend reality. They wanted the best table. They wanted the most expensive bottle. They wanted everyone to know they mattered. Elena wasn't their server initially. That fell to Marcus Chun, the owner's nephew, a college kid working his way through business school. But 5 minutes in, Marcus appeared in the kitchen with fear in his eyes and said he couldn't handle them. They were already grabbing at him, making comments about his eyes, asking if he knew kung fu, and could he please switch sections with someone. Mr. Chun looked at Elena. She nodded, picked up their drink order, walked out to their table with her professional smile locked in place like armor that wouldn't hold. It started small. It always does. Damien, snapping his fingers when she approached, refusing to make eye contact, talking over her when she tried to explain the specials. His friends laughing at jokes that weren't jokes, just cruelty wearing humor's mask. She brought their drinks. Damien said his vodka tasted watered down even though she'd watched the bartender pour it straight from the bottle. She offered to replace it. He said maybe she'd already drunk some of it. Was she drinking on the job? Was that why she looked so tired? The table erupted in laughter. She smiled, apologized, brought him a new drink. He knocked it over immediately, ice and liquid spreading across the white tablecloth, dripping onto the floor, and then he looked at her with eyes that calculated cruelty and said, "Clean it up. On your hands and knees. I want to make sure you get it all." Elena glanced toward the bar. Mr. Chun was staring at his register. She grabbed a towel, knelt down, started soaking up the spill while they took photos above her, phones angled to make her look as subservient as possible. And she heard Damien say, "This is going on my story. Hashtag terrible service. Hashtag this is what minimum wage looks like." And she felt something hot behind her eyes that wasn't tears yet, but was building toward them. She finished cleaning, stood up, asked if they were ready to order. Brett said they needed more time to decide. Maybe another 30 minutes. Oh, and could she bring more bread, the free kind, actually make it 3 baskets, and also more butter, and also could she smile more because she looked angry and it was ruining their vibe. 2 hours passed like this. Them ordering dishes and sending them back untouched, claiming the temperature was wrong, the seasoning was off, the presentation wasn't Instagram-worthy. Elena made 7 trips to their table when 2 should have sufficed. Other servers watched with sympathy they didn't act on because intervening meant becoming a target. Mr. Chin watched with fear. He didn't hide because the Russo name was on the building's deed, and one phone call from Damien's father could end everything he'd built. So Elena endured, smiled, apologized, brought them whatever they demanded. And when they finally paid their bill, Damien left a $1 tip on a $300 check, placed it deliberately in the center of the table, and said, "Better luck next time, sweetheart. Maybe work on that attitude." The restaurant closed at 11. Most of the staff cleared out by 11:30, eager to escape the exhaustion of serving people who treated them like furniture. Elena stayed late because she always stayed late, cleaning her section twice as thoroughly as required because doing things right mattered even when nobody was watching. Especially then. Mr. Chun had already left, citing an early morning meeting, and Elena knew he was just scared, knew he sensed something wrong with those 4 guys who'd moved to the bar instead of leaving, who'd ordered another bottle, who kept looking at her while she wiped down tables and stacked chairs. She was cleaning their section when Damien knocked over an entire bottle of wine. Deliberate. She watched his hand move, watched the bottle tip, watched the red liquid explode across the white floor like a crime scene. He looked at her with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Oops. Better clean that up. And this time, I want you to really get down there. On your hands and knees. Show us you care about customer satisfaction." Elena's hands shook as she grabbed towels from the service station. She could leave. Should leave. But the mortgage payment was due, her mother's insulin wasn't getting cheaper, and jobs like this didn't grow on trees for women with GEDs and gaps in their employment history. So she knelt, started soaking up the wine, felt their eyes on her back like brands, heard their phones clicking photos from angles that made her look broken. And then Kyle noticed her phone on a nearby table, picked it up without permission, saw the screensaver, a photo of Elena wrapped in the arms of a man whose face was turned away from the camera, and he laughed. "Who's this? Your boyfriend? Does he know you spend your nights on your knees for other men?" Elena stood up fast. "Give me my phone. Now." Her voice had an edge they hadn't heard before, something sharp beneath the professional courtesy. Damien took the phone from Kyle, examined the photo, looked back at Elena with interest that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with control. "We'll give it back. After you play a game with us. One little game. Then you can go home to this mystery man and tell him all about your night. Or we can post these photos we took. Tag the restaurant. Tag you if we can find your socials. Show everyone what kind of service Chin's Pearl really offers. Your choice." Elena felt the room tilt. Not from fear, from rage. But rage without power is just pain, and she was outnumbered, alone, and these men had the kind of money that made problems disappear. What game? Her voice was flat. Dead. Damien smiled. Marcus here is a barber. Went to school for it, and everything before Daddy bought him a trust fund. He's really good with a razor. We were just thinking your hair looks a little uneven. Maybe we could fix it for you. Free of charge. All you have to do is sit still. No. Elena backed toward the door. The four of them moved like they'd choreographed it, cutting off her exits, surrounding her with bodies that didn't touch her yet, but promised they would if she ran. Brett grabbed her arms. Kyle pushed her into a chair. Marcus pulled out a straight razor from his jacket pocket, the kind barbers use for close shaves, and Damien held her phone up, recording. This is going to get so many views. Girl gets free haircut at fancy restaurant. Very wholesome. Very viral. Now sit still, or this gets worse. Elena screamed. Thrashed. Tried to break free, but Kyle was on the wrestling team, and Brett lifted weights 6 days a week, and Marcus just kept saying, hold her steady, bro. I need her steady, while the razor touched her scalp, and she felt her hair being cut away in chunks, not styled, not trimmed, just destroyed, asymmetrical and brutal, and designed to humiliate. She wasn't crying about the hair itself. Hair grows back. She was crying because they'd reduced her to nothing, to an object they could violate for entertainment, to a story they'd tell their friends tomorrow while laughing. Remember that waitress? Remember how she screamed? Remember how powerless she was? The hair fell around the chair in dark clumps. They recorded every second, made jokes about chemotherapy patients, about lesbian stereotypes, about how maybe she'd learned to be nicer to customers now. Her phone buzzed on the table where Damien had tossed it. Caller ID lit up the screen. V with a red heart. Damien picked it up, grinned, answered on speaker while imitating Elena's voice in a high-pitched mockery. Hello. Can't really talk right now. I'm getting a makeover. Silence on the other end. Then a man's voice, deep and controlled in ways that suggested effort. Elena? You sound strange. Everything okay? In the background, Elena's real scream broke through as Marcus dragged the razor across another section of her scalp. The man's voice changed temperature. Where are you? Right now. Damien laughed. She's at Shin's Pearl, getting a fresh new look courtesy of Damien Russo and friends. You should come see. Bring a camera. He hung up, tossed the phone back on the table, turned to his crew. That was probably some loser boyfriend. But he won't even show. But he's sitting at home playing video games while his girl gets what she deserves. They finished shaving half her head. Deliberately asymmetrical. Deliberately devastating. Took their final photos with Elena still restrained in the chair, mascara running down her face, her dignity stripped as thoroughly as her hair. Damien was talking about what to do next, whether they should make her strip, whether they should see how far they could push this before it stopped being fun when the front door of the restaurant opened. Not the crash of someone bursting in, just the quiet click of a door being opened by someone who had every right to be there. Footsteps on the hardwood floor. Slow. Deliberate. The lights seemed to dim, though nobody had touched the switches. The temperature dropped. The four men turned toward the entrance. A man walked toward them through the shadows and the overturned chairs. 6'3", custom Italian suit that probably cost more than their cars. Dark hair swept back, eyes that reflected no light. And when he spoke, his voice was quiet enough to make them lean forward to hear it. Gentlemen, I believe you've met my wife. Victor Vasquez stood in the doorway like death had taken human form and decided to wear Armani. The four men froze. Elena still sat in the chair, half her head shaved, tears cutting tracks through her makeup, and when she saw him, her entire body shuddered with relief, so profound it looked like pain. Victor's eyes swept the room, cataloging everything in 2 seconds, the scattered hair on the floor, the phone still recording, the razor in Marcus's hand, the way they'd positioned themselves around his wife like wolves around a kill. He walked forward, slowly, each footstep deliberate. Behind him, the door opened again, and Salvatore Grimaldi entered, 6'5" of scar tissue and loyalty, and Sal locked the door behind them, pulled the shades on the windows, flipped the sign to closed. Nobody was leaving. Not yet. Victor reached Elena, removed his jacket without breaking eye contact with Damien, draped the jacket over her shoulders like he was clothing royalty. His hands were gentle when he touched her face, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. "I'm here now, Mia Moore. Go wait in the car." His voice was soft, tender, the kind of tone you'd use with something precious and breakable. Elena tried to speak, tried to tell him everything, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "I know. I'll handle it." She stood on shaking legs, walked past the four men who suddenly couldn't look at her. Sal opened the door just wide enough for her to slip through, then locked it again. The click of the deadbolt sounded like a prison cell closing. Damien found his voice first. "Look, man, we didn't know she was with someone. It was just a joke. We were just messing around. Nobody got hurt." His words tumbled over each other, tripping on fear he didn't quite understand yet. Victor pulled up a chair, sat down backward on it. Casual, comfortable, like he was settling in for a long conversation. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't made a threat. Somehow that made it worse. Brett's hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone, started typing something, probably texting his father, probably calling for help that wouldn't arrive in time. Kyle backed toward the wall like distance would save him. Marcus still held the razor, staring at it like he couldn't remember how it got in his hand. Victor spoke quietly. "Do you know who I am?" It wasn't a question. Damien's brain was working now, firing on cylinders fueled by panic, trying to place the face, the name, the authority that rolled off this man like cologne. Brett's phone screen illuminated his face as he found what he was looking for, and the blood drained from his cheeks. His voice came out strangled. "Dude, that's Victor Vasquez. The Victor Vasquez." Kyle's knees actually buckled. He caught himself on a table, started hyperventilating. Marcus dropped the razor. It clattered on the hardwood. Damien's expensive education finally produced something useful. "The Viper. Oh God. Oh Jesus Christ. You're the Viper." Victor nodded once. "Good. We can skip the introductions then. You know what I do. You know my reputation. So you understand that what happens next isn't personal. It's principle." Damien tried to speak, tried to use his father's name like a shield. "My dad, Anthony Russo, he owns half this city. He's connected. He's friends with the mayor, the police commissioner. If you touch us, there will be consequences." Victor smiled. It wasn't comforting. "Your dad rents. I own. There's a difference. And the people your father calls friends? They call me sir. Now shut up and listen because I'm only explaining this once." He stood, walked a slow circle around them like a professor giving a lecture. "Let me tell you about the woman you just violated. Her name is Elena Vasquez. She grew up in a trailer park in Arizona with a mother dying of diabetes and a father who disappeared when she was 6. She put herself through high school while working 2 jobs. She moved to this city with $300 and a dream of something better. She sends half her paycheck home every month to keep her mother alive. She's never asked me for a dime, even though I've offered her everything. She works in this restaurant because she's proud, because she's independent, because she believes in earning her own way. And you 4 pieces of trust fund garbage thought you could humiliate her for entertainment." Damien was crying now. Actual tears. Not the performative kind he'd used to get out of trouble before. Real fear leaking out his eyes. "Please, we're sorry. We'll apologize. We'll pay her. Whatever you want. Just please." Victor stopped walking, turned to face him. "What I want is for you to understand something. I've killed men for stealing from me, for lying to me, for looking at me wrong on days when my patience was thin. What do you think I do to men who hurt my wife?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Brett vomited on the floor, just bent over and emptied his stomach, the expensive dinner they'd ordered coming back up in acidic chunks. Kyle was praying. Actual prayers. Hands clasped, eyes closed. Marcus hadn't moved, looked catatonic. Victor pulled out his phone, made a call. 3 men entered within 90 seconds. Professional, efficient, carrying duffel bags. They set up chairs in a line. Industrial, metal, the kind that don't break under struggling weight. Victor gestured. "Sit." The 4 of them moved like sleepwalkers. Damien tried one more time. His voice was a whimper. "Are you going to kill us?" Victor looked genuinely offended. "Kill you? No, that's too easy. Too quick. It brings heat I don't need. Killing you would be mercy. What I'm going to do is teach you what consequences feel like." He nodded to his men. They moved with practiced precision. Restraints on wrists, restraints on ankles. Not tight enough to cut off circulation, but tight enough that struggling was pointless. Two more men entered. These ones carried barber kits. Professional grade. They set up behind each chair. Victor addressed the room. You wanted to shave my wife's head. Thought it was funny. Thought she was powerless. So here's what happens now. You get to experience exactly what she experienced. Every single second. The barber started working. Electric clippers first. Buzzing to life. Marcus screamed when the blades touched his scalp. Actually screamed like a child. The barber didn't stop. Methodical. Efficient. Taking it all off. But Victor wasn't satisfied with symmetry. He wanted them to feel her humiliation. So he instructed the barbers to do it wrong. Asymmetrical. Patches. Making them look diseased. Making them look like they'd lost a fight with a lawnmower. And then he added his own touch. The eyebrows. Take those too. Kyle was begging now. Full sentences of desperation. I have a job interview Monday. I have a girlfriend. Please. Please don't. The barber removed his eyebrows with the same efficiency he'd removed his hair. Kyle looked like a giant infant when it was finished. Alien and wrong. Victor had another innovation. He picked up Damien's phone. Unlocked it. The idiot hadn't even secured it with a password. Opened his Instagram. Started a live stream. 50 followers watching within seconds. Then 100. Then 500. Victor positioned the phone so the camera caught all four of them, bald and eyebrowless and crying. He spoke into the camera. My name is Victor Vasquez. These four men assaulted my wife tonight. Shave her head for fun while she begged them to stop. This is what happens when you hurt innocent people. This is what justice looks like when the system fails. He posted the same thing to Brett's account. Then Kyle's. Then Marcus's. Their phones blew up. Notifications pouring in like rain. Parents calling. Friends texting. Future employers watching. The humiliation was permanent now. Digital. Forever. Damien's father called. Victor answered. Put on speaker. Anthony Russo's voice came through tight with anger. Who is this? What are you doing to my son? Victor's response was calm. Your son and his friends sexually assaulted and physically assaulted my wife. I'm teaching him something you failed to teach him. Respect. There was silence on the other end. Then Anthony's voice changed. Became calculating. I can make this go away. Whatever you want. Name a price. Victor laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. You can't afford what I want. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. Your real estate empire is about to face code violations. Tax audits. Permit issues. Not enough to destroy you. Just enough to bleed money for years. And your son will know it's because of him. Live with that. He hung up. Kyle's father called. This one was different. Older voice. Tired. Mr. Vasquez? The man sounded defeated. This is Robert Chun, Kyle's father. I saw the live stream. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to thank you. I've tried for years to teach my son consequences. He's never learned. Maybe this will do what I couldn't. Please, make sure he learns. Victor respected that. Told him his son would be fine. Scared. Humiliated. But fine. Robert Chun thanked him again. Said he'd make sure Kyle left the city. Found somewhere to start over. Somewhere his family's money wouldn't protect him from his choices. Brett's mother called hysterical. Screaming about lawyers and police and lawsuits. Victor let her finish. Then explained very carefully what her son had done. The screaming stopped. Turned to crying. She asked to speak to Brett. Victor held the phone to Brett's ear. The kid sobbed. Mom, sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I was drunk. I was stupid. His mother's voice came through cold. You're not my son anymore. Figure out yourself. She hung up. Brett went silent after that. Shock maybe, or acceptance. Victor stood, adjusted his cufflinks. The barbers finished their work. Four bald, eyebrowless men sat in chairs, covered in hair clippings, looking like they'd aged 30 years in 30 minutes. Victor addressed them one final time. You're going to leave this city. Tonight. Don't come back. If I ever hear you've hurt another woman, another worker, another human being. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Their imaginations were doing the work now, filling in blanks with horrors worse than anything he'd say out loud. Sal unlocked the door, opened it. Cold air rushed in. The four of them stumbled out into the night. Bald, branded, broken in ways that had nothing to do with bodies and everything to do with souls. Victor stayed behind, surveyed the restaurant, the hair on the floor, the overturned chairs, the evidence of violation. Mr. Chin appeared in the doorway, tentative, cowardly, started apologizing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vasquez. I didn't know. I was scared. The lease. The money." Victor held up a hand. "Silence. You let them hurt her. You could have stopped it. You chose your business over her dignity." Mr. Chun tried to explain, started babbling about mortgages and permits and how the Russo family controlled the building. Victor pulled out his phone, made one call, bought the building from the Russo family for twice market value because money talks and scare money talks faster. He turned back to Mr. Chun. "You have 30 days. Find somewhere else to hide." Mr. Chun left without another word. Victor walked out to his car. Elena sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in his jacket. She looked small, fragile. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Elena spoke. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. "Did you kill them?" Victor kept his eyes on the road. "No, something worse. I made them live with what they did." Elena touched her head, felt the asymmetrical patches where hair remained and spaces where it didn't. Her fingers traced the lines of violation like reading Braille that spelled out powerless. Victor glanced at her, reached across the center console, took her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. Something had broken in her tonight that wouldn't heal with vengeance or protection or love. Something fundamental about how she saw herself in the world. They pulled into the driveway of their house 20 minutes later. Not a mansion, not the kind of place people expected a man like Victor to live. 3-bedroom ranch in a quiet neighborhood where people mowed their lawns on Saturdays and nobody asked questions about the man in the expensive suits who came and went at odd hours. Elena had picked this house, said she wanted normal, wanted a place that felt like a home instead of a fortress. Victor had agreed because making her happy was the only thing that mattered more than his empire. Inside, she went straight to the bathroom, locked the door. Victor heard the water running, heard her crying behind the barrier of wood and dignity she'd erected between them. He stood outside the door with his hand pressed against it like he could transfer strength through solid matter. "Elena, let me in." Her voice came back broken. "I need a minute. Just give me a minute." He gave her 30, stood there the entire time. Finally, the door opened. She emerged with her face washed clean of makeup and tears, wearing one of his old T-shirts, looking younger and older simultaneously. She walked past him to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at her hands. Victor sat beside her, didn't touch her, waited. Elena's voice was barely audible. "I wanted to handle it myself. The harassment, the comments, the degradation. I knew it was happening. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to be the mafia wife who runs to her husband every time someone disrespects her. I wanted to prove I could stand on my own, that I didn't need your protection, that I was strong enough." She laughed. Bitter sound. Turns out I wasn't. Victor turned to face her. "You're the strongest person I know. What they did doesn't change that." Elena shook her head. "They made me feel like nothing. Like I was just a body they could use for entertainment. Like my thoughts and feelings and humanity didn't matter. That's not weakness on your part. That's evil on theirs." She looked at him finally, eyes red, furious. "I hate that I needed you to save me." Victor's response was immediate. "You didn't need saving. You needed backup. There's a difference. Partners don't save each other. They show up. They witness. They support. What happened tonight wasn't about you being weak. It was about them being predators and you being outnumbered. If I'd been the one in that restaurant and 4 men attacked me, you'd have shown up too. That's not saving. That's love." Elena's face crumpled. She collapsed against him. Let him hold her while she cried for real this time. Not the scared tears from earlier, but the angry ones, the grief ones, the tears that came from loss that had nothing to do with hair and everything to do with safety. They sat like that for an hour, maybe more. Time moved differently when someone you love is breaking apart in your arms. Eventually, Elena pulled back, wiped her face, stood up, walked to the bathroom mirror, really looked at herself for the first time. The asymmetrical disaster of her head, the patches, the rawness, Victor appeared behind her in the reflection. I can call someone. A stylist. They'll fix it tonight. Make it even. Make it beautiful. Elena stared at her reflection, touched the shaved parts, the unshaved parts, shook her head slowly. No, leave it for now. I want to remember. I want to look at this every morning and remember what they did and what you did and who I'm underneath all of it. Victor understood. This was her reclaiming the narrative, turning violation into testimony. She turned to face him. I'm not going back to the restaurant. Not because I'm scared, because I'm done letting people treat me like I'm disposable. You've offered me money 1,000 times. I've always said no. I needed to earn my own way, prove my own worth. But I'm done proving things to people who don't value me. I want to do something else now. Something that matters. Victor leaned against the doorframe. Tell me. Elena's eyes got sharp, focused. I want to start a foundation for service workers, people who face harassment and abuse and have nowhere to turn because they need the job more than they need dignity. I want to give them legal help, financial support, a voice. I want to turn what happened to me into something that protects other people. Victor felt pride swell in his chest. How much do you need? Elena held up a hand. No, I need to build this myself. My way, with my rules. You can help with legal stuff, security if needed. But the money, the vision, the execution, that's mine. He respected her more in that moment than he'd ever respected anyone. Not at once. Whatever you need. She walked past him, sat at the kitchen table, grabbed a notebook, started writing. Victor watched her transform from victim to warrior in real time. Pen moving across paper. Ideas forming. Purpose crystallizing. This was Elena. This was who she'd always been underneath the aprons and the smiles and the professional courtesy. Someone who turned pain into power. Who alchemized suffering into service. He made coffee, brought her a cup, kissed the top of her head where hair used to be. Went to bed alone because she was working and nothing would stop her now. News spread fast in Victor's world. By morning, every boss, every soldier, every connected person in the city knew what had happened. More importantly, they knew how Victor had responded. Not with murder, not with disappearances, with calculated humiliation that sent a message louder than violence. You can be ruthless and still have principles. You can be dangerous and still protect the innocent. Victor's phone rang continuously. Allies calling to express respect. Enemies calling to reassure him they'd never cross similar lines. The balance of power shifted slightly in his favor because he'd shown something more intimidating than cruelty. He'd shown purpose. Sal came by the house around noon. Found Victor in his office reviewing reports. Sat down without being invited because that's what 20 years of loyalty earned you. Boss, everyone's talking. Good talking or bad talking. Sal grinned. Good. They're saying you went soft for your wife, but hard on principle. That's a reputation you can build on. Victor closed the folder he'd been reading. I don't care about reputation. I care that Elena is okay. Sal's grin faded. How is she? Victor looked toward the kitchen where Elena was still planning, still writing, still transforming. She's becoming something those 4 idiots couldn't destroy even if they tried. Sal nodded. Good. Because Anthony Russo wants a meeting. Victor leaned back in his chair. Tell him no. Sal raised an eyebrow. He's desperate, boss. You hit his business hard. Code violations appeared overnight. His permits are stuck in bureaucratic hell. He's bleeding money. Let him bleed. Sal hesitated. It's good business to negotiate. Shows strength, but also mercy. Builds alliances. Victor considered this. Elena appeared in the doorway. I heard. Take the meeting. Victor looked at her. You sure? She nodded. Let him grovel. Let him pay. But make sure his son learns something. Not for him. For the next person he might hurt. Victor agreed. Set it up. Public place. Neutral ground. Tomorrow. The meeting happened at a cafe in the financial district. Expensive coffee. Uncomfortable chairs. People in suits negotiating deals that moved millions. Victor arrived first. Ordered black coffee. Waited. Anthony Russo walked in looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. Expensive suit that didn't hide the desperation. He sat down across from Victor. Didn't offer a handshake. Smart. Mr. Vasquez. Thank you for meeting me. Victor said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Anthony cleared his throat. I came to apologize. For my son. For what he did to your wife. And to ask what it will take to stop the bleeding. Victor sipped his coffee. Teach your son to be a man. That's the price. Anthony's face showed confusion. I don't understand. Victor set down his cup. Your son is 23 years old. You've bailed him out of 3 DUIs. 2 assault charges. God knows how many other situations you've made disappear with money. He thinks consequences don't exist. He thinks power means being able to hurt people without punishment. You created that. You failed as a father. I can't fix that. Anthony's face reddened. I've tried. He doesn't listen. Victor leaned forward. Then you haven't tried hard enough. Because listening isn't optional when the alternative is destruction. Anthony pulled out his checkbook. What do you want? How much? Victor almost laughed. You think this is about money? Anthony looked confused. Everything's about money. Victor shook his head. That's why your son is broken. Because you taught him everything has a price and nothing has value. I don't want your money. I want your son to understand what he did. I want him to feel it. Really feel it. Not for a day or a week. For the rest of his life. Anthony put away the checkbook. Then what? What do you want me to do? Victor outlined his terms. 3 non-negotiable demands. First, Damien records a video apology to Elena. Real one. Not lawyer-written. Not PR-managed. From his heart, if he has one. Post it publicly. Second, the Russo family donates $500,000 to Elena's foundation when it launches. Not as charity, as restitution. Third, Damien completes 1,000 hours of community service at a soup kitchen. Serving people. Learning humility. Learning that people in service positions are human beings deserving respect. Do those 3 things, and I stop the financial attacks. Your business recovers. Your son gets a chance at redemption. Refuse, and I burn your empire to the ground. Anthony sat back. His face showed calculation. Deal. But I need you to understand something, Mr. Vasquez. My son, he's not going to change. I know him. This will humiliate him, but it won't transform him. Some people are just. He trailed off. Victor finished the sentence. Broken. Yeah, I know. But that's not my problem. My problem was he hurt my wife. That problem is solved. Whether he becomes a better person is between him and whatever God he believes in. Anthony stood, extended his hand. Victor looked at it, shook it once. Firm, brief. Anthony left. Victor sat alone with his coffee, pulled out his phone, texted Elena. It's done. Her response came back immediately. Good. Now come home. I need you to shave the rest of my head. I want to do this right. He found her in the bathroom when he got home. Clippers on the counter. She was staring at herself in the mirror with determination that made her beautiful. I don't want them to have shaved my head. I want me to have shaved my head. Does that make sense? Victor picked up the clippers. Perfect sense. She sat. He started the clippers. Buzzed away everything that remained. Made it even. Made it hers. When he finished, she looked different. Felt different. Ran her hands over her scalp. Started crying. But these were different tears. Relief tears. Taking back control tears. She turned to him. Thank you. For everything. For tonight. For always. Victor cupped her face. You don't thank someone for loving you. That's just what we do. They stood in the bathroom, surrounded by her hair and her choice and the future she was building from ashes. 6 months crawled by like seasons changing under a microscope. Elena's foundation, dignity and service, operated out of a renovated space on Riverside. The same building where Chin's Pearl used to be. Victor had bought it, gutted it, rebuilt it into something that mattered. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Where Elena had been violated, now stood the headquarters for protecting others from similar violations. The grand opening happened on a Saturday in April. Sunshine pouring through windows that had been replaced, floors refinished, walls painted in colors Elena chose herself, because every detail mattered when you were building something from trauma. Local press showed up. Community leaders. Workers from restaurants and hotels and retail stores across the city. People who understood what it meant to smile through disrespect, to swallow anger because rent was due, to endure because survival demanded it. Elena stood at a microphone looking nothing like the woman who'd been shattered 6 months ago. Her hair had grown into a deliberate pixie cut styled sharp and confident. She wore a black suit Victor had bought her, custom-tailored, and when she spoke, her voice carried authority that came from suffering transformed into purpose. I'm not going to tell you what happened to me was a blessing in disguise. It wasn't. It was violation. It was cruelty. It was for men who thought my humanity was negotiable. But I'm going to tell you what I did with it. I turned my worst moment into my greatest purpose. This foundation exists because I refused to let what happened to me happen to anyone else without consequence, without support, without justice. We provide legal representation for workers facing harassment. We offer emergency funds for people who lose jobs because they reported abuse. We create accountability where systems fail. And we do it because dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right. The applause was genuine. Not polite charity event clapping, but real recognition from people who'd lived similar stories, who'd felt similar powerlessness, who saw themselves in her survival. Victor watched from the back of the room. He wanted to stand beside her on stage, but she'd refused. This was hers. He was support, not spotlight. Sal stood next to him. She's something else, boss. Victor nodded without taking his eyes off Elena. Always has been. I just gave her the platform to show everyone else. The event continued with testimonials from the foundation's first clients. A dishwasher who'd been sexually harassed by his manager for 8 months reported it, got fired, and now had dignity and service lawyers forcing a settlement that would change his life. A hotel housekeeper who'd been assaulted by a guest got blamed by her employer and now had the resources to fight back legally and financially. Stories poured out like confessions in church. People bearing witness to the fact that someone finally gave a damn about workers who'd been invisible too long. Damian Russo's video had gone viral 3 months earlier. 20 million views and counting. He sat in what looked like a sparse apartment. No designer clothes, no styling. Just a bald kid with regret carved in his face, trying to form words adequate for the harm he'd caused. My name is Damian Russo. 6 months ago, I assaulted a woman named Elena Vasquez. I shaved her head while she begged me to stop. I humiliated her, violated her, treated her like she wasn't human because I thought money and privilege made me untouchable. I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I'm asking everyone watching to understand that what I did was evil. Not a mistake. Not a joke gone wrong. Evil. And if you've ever treated service workers or anyone like they're beneath you, like their dignity doesn't matter, you're capable of the same evil I showed that night. Learn from my failure. Be better than I was. The comments section was ruthless but educational. People dragging him appropriately. Others sharing their own stories of harassment. Some offering grudging respect for the accountability, even while acknowledging it couldn't undo the damage. Damian himself was working his 1,000th hour at St. Michael's Soup Kitchen downtown. Victor had people checking on his progress. Reports came back mixed. The kid showed up, did the work, served meals to homeless veterans and struggling families with something resembling humility. But whether he'd actually changed or just learned to perform remorse was unclear. Some transformations take years. Some never happen. Victor didn't particularly care which category Damian fell into as long as he never hurt another person. That was the only metric that mattered. The $500,000 from the Russo family had arrived in dignity in Service's account exactly on schedule. Anthony Russo showed up to the grand opening uninvited but not unwelcome. He stood near the entrance looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit, holding an envelope. When Elena finished her speech, he approached her carefully, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Mrs. Vasquez, I know I'm not welcome here. I just wanted to give you this personally. He handed her the envelope. Inside was an additional $200,000 check. She looked at him with eyes that held no forgiveness but acknowledged the gesture. This doesn't fix what your son did. Anthony nodded. I know. It's not meant to. It's meant to help you fix what my failures created. Not just with Damian. With every entitled kid who grows up thinking money excuses cruelty. I failed as a father. Maybe this helps you succeed where I didn't. Elena took the check, folded it carefully. Thank you for this. Not for the apology. The apology means nothing without change. But for this. For recognizing that wealth creates responsibility. Anthony nodded again. left without another word, carrying his shame like luggage he'd never unpack. The other three had scattered like refugees. Kyle moved to Seattle, worked in his uncle's warehouse, kept his head down literally and figuratively, still went to therapy twice a week, tried to process what he'd participated in. His father sent Elena a letter once, thanking her for not destroying his son completely, acknowledging that Kyle needed destroying partially, expressing hope that distance and labor might rebuild what privilege had corroded. Brett stayed in the city, but became invisible, got a job in data entry, deleted all social media, sent Elena an apology letter that took him 47 drafts to write, each one trying to find words adequate for inadequacy. She never responded, but she kept the letter, not as forgiveness, as evidence that some people try even when trying can undo harm. Marcus never recovered. The humiliation triggered something that had probably always been unstable. He attempted suicide 2 months after that night, survived, spent 90 days in psychiatric care, and now lived in a group home, taking medication that kept him functional, but barely. Elena felt complicated about this. Didn't wish death on anyone, but recognized that consequences were real, that actions produced reactions, that psychological fragility didn't excuse psychological violence. Victor gave a speech at Elena's insistence. He hated public speaking, preferred shadows to spotlights, but she'd asked, and he couldn't refuse her anything that mattered. He stood at the microphone, feeling exposed, dozens of eyes on him, people who knew his reputation wondering what a man like him had to say about dignity and service. Most of you know me by reputation. You know what I do, what I am. I'm not here to apologize for that or explain it. I'm here because the strongest person I know asked me to be. Elena didn't need me to save her 6 months ago. She needed me to witness her save herself. That's what we all owe each other. Not saving, witnessing, supporting, showing up. The room was silent. Nobody expected philosophy from a mafia boss. Nobody expected vulnerability from the Viper. But Victor had learned something in 6 months of watching Elena transform trauma into mission. Power without purpose was just destruction. And he'd spent enough of his life destroying things. Maybe it was time to build something, even if he could only build it by supporting someone else's vision. The first client of the day walked through the door 2 hours into the grand opening. Young man, maybe 19, busboy at an upscale steakhouse downtown, being sexually harassed by his manager for 3 months, scared to report it because he needed the job to pay for community college. Elena took his case personally, sat with him, listened to his story, promised him that reporting wouldn't cost him his future, that she'd make sure of it, that his voice mattered. Victor watched from his position against the back wall, saw Elena do what she'd always done best. See people, really see them, not as victims or statistics, but as humans deserving respect and protection. That's what those 4 idiots hadn't understood 6 months ago. That Elena wasn't just a waitress to be humiliated. She was a woman building an empire of empathy while they built nothing but regret. Late that night, after the grand opening ended and the press left and the clients went home with hope they hadn't had that morning, Elena and Victor sat in their kitchen. Same table where she'd planned everything 6 months ago. She was exhausted, fulfilled, different. He brought her tea without being asked. Sat across from her. She looked up. Do you ever regret it? What you did to them? Victor's response was immediate. Every day I regret I didn't do worse. Elena smiled slightly. That's not the answer I wanted. Victor leaned forward, then asked a different question. Elena considered this. Do you think they learned anything? Victor shrugged. Some lessons only come through pain. I gave him the lesson. What they do with it is on them. Marcus couldn't handle it. That's not my fault or yours. That's his fragility meeting consequences he'd avoided his whole life. Damien might be performing remorse or feeling it. Time will tell. Kyle and Brett seem to be trying. That's more than most people do. We broke them down. Whether they rebuild into something better is their choice. Elena nodded slowly. She understood his world better now, even though she'd never be part of it. Understood that justice came in forms the law didn't recognize. Understood that sometimes righteousness wore expensive suits and carried violence in its pocket. She stood, walked to him, sat in his lap like she used to before that night, before the razor, before the transformation. Kissed him with gratitude and love and partnership that had been tested and emerged stronger. Thank you for that night, for every night since, for letting me build this my way, for being exactly who you are. Victor held her close. You don't thank someone for loving you. That's just what we do. They sat together in their kitchen while the city hummed outside. Danger and opportunity and life continuing in equal measure. Two people from different worlds who'd chosen each other in a minute, who'd faced something terrible and refused to let it define them, who'd turned violation into purpose and pain into power. Elena's foundation helped 63 workers in its first 6 months. 63 people who faced harassment, discrimination, assault, and now had resources to fight back. The number would grow. The foundation would expand. Elena's mission would reach further than Victor's empire ever could, because empathy spreads differently than fear. She'd become something those 4 men couldn't have predicted when they thought shaving her head would be entertainment. She'd become dangerous in ways that mattered. Not with violence, but with purpose. Not with destruction, but with building. And Victor, the Viper, the man who'd built an empire on fear and respect, found himself proudest of the fact that his greatest accomplishment wasn't anything he'd done for himself, but what he'd enabled her to do for others. Elena turned her worst moment into her greatest purpose. She learned that dignity isn't given by others. It's claimed by yourself. That powerlessness is temporary, but purpose can be permanent. That surviving isn't enough. You have to transform. She looked at her reflection now and saw not a victim, but a warrior. Not someone broken, but someone rebuilt. The scar tissue of trauma had become armor. The vulnerability of that night had become strength. And the 4 men who thought they could reduce her to nothing had accidentally created something unstoppable. That was the lesson. That was the victory. Not what Victor did to them, though justice mattered, but what Elena did with what they'd done to her. She alchemized suffering into service, turned her pain into protection for others, became the person she needed when nobody was there. That's real power. That's lasting legacy. That's how you win even when you've lost everything. If this story moved you, if you believe in standing up for the powerless and turning pain into purpose, subscribe to this channel right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. More stories of survival, justice, and redemption are coming. You're not alone.